Next slide, please. Okay, so just a little bit of some background or some information. We do live in a world that's increasingly violent, punitive, and painful, and we heard a testament to that in a lot of the people that presented today. We exist in a cycle of pointing fingers and assessing blame on one another. And in some cases, this has been decades, even centuries, where we've been in kind of this cycle of blaming one another and really thinking of ourselves rather than a communal situation. So it's really going to be important in understanding and being able to address the problems and concerns that we have in the future to kind of change our mind from this constant focus on the individual, what's good for me rather than what's good for one another or the community as a whole. So the leadership that's going to be required in the future is going to need a seismic, I call it seismic because it is a huge change in the way that we're thinking from that individualistic kind of situation to a one that's more humankind, more human-centered, and more community-centered. So we must shift our concern from a predominant individual benefit mentality to a concern for the good of the humanity and the collectivity. This shift can be recognized through the practice of Ubuntu. This is a leadership approach for the 21st century and beyond, but has been passed down through community and families in Africa throughout the ages. So you may ask, how did I come into contact with Ubuntu? Through my doctoral studies, I met a fine person named Ruth. She is from Cameroon. We would have these long conversations about very sensitive topics. And one day I just asked her, Ruth, how do you have this great approach to life, to sharing your history, your pain, the things that you've gone through in life? And her simple answer was Ubuntu. So when we were asked to give this presentation to this group of people, I thought, what better idea to present than Ubuntu? So I do want to just make you guys aware that this is kind of like a trailer to a blockbuster movie. We're just getting you started. The purpose of this presentation is to really spark an interest of Ubuntu in you so that you go out and you do the research, because Ubuntu encompasses a lot of things. It encompasses leadership, it encompasses your personal life, the way you interact with one another, as well as the social justice aspect. So we're gonna just be touching on just the very, very tip of the iceberg, because in all reality, Ubuntu is a way to live your life, not just a way to lead. So I'm on the screen, you'll see a couple of different ways that people have described Ubuntu. The first one is a pervasive spirit of caring and community, harmony and hospitality, respect and responsiveness that individuals and groups display for one another. And then the next one is I am because we are. And then the last one is we are human only through the humanity of others. So I want you to think about these three statements. I want them to be held in your heart while we finish this presentation. And I want you to kind of think about, how would the world be different? How would our work be different? How would our interactions be different if we approached the world and other people with Ubuntu centered in the way that we carry ourselves and interact with one another? So Ubuntu actually has three, I think we actually missed a slide, Julie. I think there's one in between.
Yeah, I don't know if it's on here. Go ahead.
Okay, so just a little bit of history about Ubuntu. It's a humanistic philosophical concept that's rooted in the history of Africa. So embedded in this idea or this philosophy of Ubuntu is the way that African people typically relate to one another, and they have less of an importance on the material world and actual competitiveness. So it's really kind of just a human to human relational philosophy approach. The translation of Ubuntu literally means community or humanity. So the central aspect of it is being human and being part of a community. Again, we're talking about things like I am because we are. What a impactful statement to understand that I am a person because you are in my community and because you are a person. So basically what that's saying is I'm only a person because you help me be a person, or you're in my my community, so that helps me be a person. It's the idea of leading through collaboration rather than isolation. Ubuntu really is centralized on the fact that no one is an island. We are all in this community, and if you fail, I fail. If I prevail, then you prevail as well. This idea speaks to the very essence of being a human being. And it came into the global sphere, kind of the global understanding with Nelson Mandela and Archbishop Desmond Tutu. So they really championed this idea of as a leadership way to approach the pain that was caused by apartheid. So they realized that they were never going to recover or come out of the darkness of apartheid if they didn't forgive, and if they didn't see their neighbors that participated in apartheid or oppressed them as humans too. So really that's how the world knew or became known of Ubuntu. There's actually 3 dimensions of Ubuntu that we're going to be talking about. The first one is humanness, the second one is interconnectedness, and the third one is compassion. So when we're talking about humanness, what I really want to stress is that in this world, the young people really need to use their gifts to build communities and one another rather than just building themselves as an individual. So we have a lot of opportunity here because we are in a room of a lot of young people, and we have a lot of young people that are willing to put their gifts on the table to build a community, and that's very central to the idea of Ubuntu. Again, we're talking about being aware of oneself and others. So kind of, I know a lot of us have learned about emotional intelligence, whether it be through, a college course or a work course, but that is central to Ubuntu as well. It's one of those ideas where you have to know yourself in order to know others, but you also have to know others to know yourself. So very central to Ubuntu. And also in that guard of humanness is the respect and dignity. The Ubuntu philosophy really respects the humanity of people and strives to present dignity in all of the interactions that you have day to day and over time. And these can be little things like smiling and laughing when you're in the presence of other people, and that you're putting people first. So I think that's not necessarily a 21st century way of holding ourselves, is putting other people before ourselves. But Ubuntu really encourages you to think of other people, the community, and the global world. And there may be a question of, well, they say on the airplane, put your mask on before you put your mask on your child. But in the frame of Ubuntu, their thought process is, if you are going outside of yourself and you are helping others and helping your greater community, in result of that, you will be helping yourself. You will be bettering yourself, and you will be in a better place of mind and health if you are helping others, because that will come on to you. It's kind of like karma. And it's about living in a genuine way, being a genuine human that has an interest in the suffering and the happiness of their fellow people. The Ubuntu people say that Ubuntu says that a person that has Ubuntu is living a genuine human way of life. A lack of Ubuntu means that the person is missing human excellence, and in some cases they would refer to that person as having animal characteristics, even though they are human. So at the bottom line, the humanness of Ubuntu is just really paying respect and dignity to the people of the world, and that will come back to you. So the second piece of Ubuntu is interconnectedness. So with this aspect, we're really looking at people are bound to one another through humanity. So what that basically means is that, if you think of it as, I always think of it as this kind of this energy that flows from me to you, and eventually everybody is connected. And like we said earlier, if one person fails, we all fail. If one person is triumphant, then we're all triumphant. And it's this thought that if humanity is to survive and thrive, we must look after everyone. So another way to think of it is, there's no place where I end and you begin. So there's no differentiation between a hurt that's done to me and a hurt that's done to you, because when I hurt you, it's going to eventually end up hurting me. And also in the interconnectedness, we talk about the idea of a person, and that a person is only a person through other persons. So I alone on myself am not a person. Like, what gives me the characteristics and the elements of a person is the people that I interact with every day. The people that acknowledge me as a person, as a human, that's how I'm a human, if that makes sense. Like, I can't name myself a human or a person. My community and those people that know me, that have a consistent narrative of who I am, they're the only ones that can name me a person or name me consistently me. So and that's a very different idea than I think the Western world holds. We think that we have this unique identity, that it's there just because I'm here. And Ubuntu takes a very different approach to it. And it's kind of a situation where it takes a community to raise a child. Well, it takes a community to raise a person. So that's an idea of Ubuntu. The identity requires a relationship with others in order for you to be you. Again, we're talking about that consistent narrative of who you are. And involved in the interconnectedness is really the idea of protecting the community. So it's not that I am going to just protect myself. My interest is in the protection of the entire community. So the next one is compassion. And I got to this one just a little bit later. So we're just gonna see how this one goes. So with the compassion aspect of it, we're just looking at, we're sharing in the experience of others, and that's good and bad. So a lot of times it's easier to be with people when they're experiencing good things. If there's a situation where good things are happening in their life, it's easy to be their friend. It's easier to be their support when good things happen. But in Ubuntu, you also have to be there in the bad times. You have to share in the bad times. You have to support in the bad times, and you have to really be there for them in their good and bad from your life. And it's the idea of fully immersing yourself in the human condition. Again, I cry when you cry. I rejoice when you rejoice, or I sing when you sing. So that's the idea of the compassion aspect of Ubuntu. So those are the 3 tenets of Ubuntu. And with this workshop, really what we wanted to do is kind of just give you kind of the basics of Ubuntu. Julie's going to finish with a couple more slides, but a lot of this is going to be interactive. So I'll hand it over to Julie.
Hello, everyone. So just to go over some of the, I guess, wisdom that comes from Ubuntu. And some of these, anyone that's done any peace studies, research or anything like that, they sound very familiar, I believe. See yourself in other people. So what does that mean? Like maybe your friend or coworker has a weakness that you recognize because you see it in yourself, and kind of take some grace to understand their struggle that they are having. So kind of look for your thing, like what is something about you and another person, and then how can you help them with that. Unity. As Tina spoke on, this is more about more of a community way of thinking, that everything impacts everyone, and less about how does this affect you when you're thinking about everything, really, whether it's trouble or happiness, either one. This is a really familiar one for a lot of you. Walk in someone else's shoes. which kind of goes along with seeing yourself in other people. So if you can walk in someone else's shoes, maybe you can't really feel exactly what they've been through, but you can acknowledge it and think about how it's impacted their journey. Choose to broaden your horizon. It really talks a little bit about how you might look beyond just what's immediately in front of you when you're solving a problem or going through a hard time or even a positive time. Can you see past that moment that you're stuck in at that time? Respect others and yourself. I think Tina covered that a lot. It kind of fits into that too. And also with the mask, you have to, respect yourself before you can respect others. Belief in the good of all. So if you believe in the good of all, you believe that everyone has a chance to be a good person and do good things. So try not to dwell on and focus on the bad things that make up a person or that they're going through. Hope over optimism. That really is, so it talks a little bit about how you should always have hope, even if a situation is the most dire, terrible thing you could find yourself in. Hope means that even when things are really tough or difficult, you still have hope that it could be different. And a lot of people find hope in things like their faith or even community. They just hope for a change or a better tomorrow. So that, kind of another tenet of wisdom that we can bring from Ubuntu. At this time, we have a couple questions that we'd like to, since we've given you a little bit of an overview of what this philosophy is, wanted to know if we could open it up to a couple questions. The first one is, what might it mean for you, for me, and for all of humanity if we adopted this philosophy? Like, how might it change the world? And I'm going to stop sharing the slides here. Anybody want to add anything? No, it's kind of a deep question. Like,
well, sorry.
That's okay. Go ahead.
It is a deep question, and so I'm gonna, if it's okay, because the question I had is a more narrow, I think, version of that question is, I guess, how do people in this session, or how do you and Tina see this concept being implemented or acknowledged in youth justice and in the court system, and how it can, help in terms of youth justice, I guess. Sorry, that was very ineloquent, but so I guess that question, but like at the youth justice level, I'm curious as to people's thoughts on integrating this concept.
So for me, I always, when I started to look into Ubuntu, I really kind of paired it up with servant leadership, which is definitely something we've ran into in the West. So I think as far as Ubuntu, I think we've talked about some of the tenets throughout the workshops that we've had over the past 2 days. It's really about realizing that, let's say, for instance, if I'm punitive to somebody that's coming from crime or whatever the case may be, that punitive assessment that's being placed on that person is eventually going to come back to me. So I think if we are centered in Ubuntu when we are looking at people that are justice involved, I think it's going to give you a broader view of being able to say, is this, if I look at the whole story, is this person going to be able to be integrated back into society? I'm not just looking at this moment in time. I'm looking at how this person has performed in the past or acted in the past, but I'm also looking to the future, because Ubuntu says that we have to have a mindset for the future. We have to have hope for the future. So I think, giving you kind of a short answer, I think social justice is a piece of using Ubuntu for people that are justice involved. But for us, we really wanted to present it as a leadership model to kind of look at the collective, how people fit into the greater society, and how they can be, I don't want to say reformed because it's not really that, but how the community can really embrace them to help them reintegrate into a society that will welcome them.
And feel like they're connected to the society.
Right.
I think it is. You know, I think we think a lot of times about, and I believe Dr. Kaufman spoke on it a little bit today. We think about how might we punish someone. And I know, especially in the school systems, a lot of times it has to do with, you know, you can't play sports, you can't, you know, attend these events. And, you know, could this be a way to think a little bit differently about that? You know, we have a lot of school shootings that happen because kids become very disconnected, and they're not connected to their community. They're not connected to their school community. Could these, you know, this different way of thinking help some of that? You know, it's a big task at hand, but, you know, if you get people to think about connecting to their community, then, you know, maybe we can change our thinking a little bit about how we do that in the schools. And are we shutting out the kids that maybe are only good at sports because they don't have a 3 point whatever GPA, or you know, maybe they don't get to go to all those last things their senior year of high school because they have poor grades, but we're never in trouble. Like, I think maybe we could take it a little bit more on a different route and see if that is a solution to thinking.
And just to follow that up, I think a really important quote that I've come across in just reading about this is one from Nelson Mandela when he was building the Rainbow Nation. He noted that anything that's going to move forward must forgive and reach out. So I think as people that are leaders within this space, I think the first step is just reaching out. I think we have to come into things with an open mind and an open heart and an open hand to really try to touch these kids that have had all of this trauma, that are in the wrong place at the wrong time, whatever the circumstances are. I think the first step is just reaching out. I mean, I don't know if that helped or if it answered.
Yes, thank you. Yes.
Kathy?
I was listening here, and I think you may have already addressed my question, but I'm going to put the question out there so that if there's anything you'd like to add. But there's the practical application in communities and for individuals one-on-one, particularly youth who have trauma in their home, which is sort of a norm in their environment. And how would that be, how would those individuals, and maybe it's only on an individual level or either some type of system or program, find those concepts, you know, holding on to hope and, you know, the things that you've described. How do you transition individuals like that? It could be the youth, their family, their parents, or how the school system perceives them. I think you've touched on it, but maybe you could elaborate a little bit.
So I think there are some programs that are trying to put these type of ideas into like social justice networks or programs. But I think really, because this isn't a Western view necessarily, I think it's going to be up to the actual leaders in this space to really, like I said, reach out to them and really start with an Ubuntu mindset to really show by example, you know, because if you're a leader in this space and you're using these techniques or this framework, you know, and you get results, then it's going to have a ripple effect. So I think it's really incumbent upon the leaders and the, you know, the people that are in the space of helping youth and people involved in juvenile justice. It's incumbent upon us to really, because what we've been doing has not been working. So in order to change the tide, it has to be the leaders that are in that space. So it's really up to us. There's workshops, there's you know, organizations that specialize in this. There are you know, organizations that are trying to incorporate this into you know, justice type organizations. I think, but I really think it's the reach out. It's us reaching out to people that are in need and showing compassion. We don't even have to name it Ubuntu. We just need to bring them to the table. We need to show them that they matter and give them the grace to rise from the circumstances that they have. And I think that's a simple first step that we can try to be mindful of as we interact with people. I don't know, Julie, do you have anything else?
Let Franklin go ahead and ask his question first, and then I'll follow up.
Well, mine isn't so much a question as a thought. I'm a juvenile court judge in Santa Clara. My fellow judges and I are continue to keep pushing our probation department to get active at the 3rd grade level. Because by the time I see a young person, they've already been charged with a felony and they have a lot of baggage. But it is so important that we carry these concepts early and try to provide help for the families at 2nd and 3rd grade level, because I think you can spot some of the troubles by then. And we ignore all that right now. We put all our money in doing things at the end when we really need to be doing them at the front end.
One thing I've noticed, and I'll share the book after we finish our presentation, but a lot of the writing about this topic is very easy reading. It's not, and I think that's what makes it fit that well, because, you know, sometimes you have parents in those situations that don't have time to sit down and read a book that's 1,000 pages long to learn, you know, how to implement this. And it's kind of a little bit of common sense things. It's not an abstract idea. So I think it is something that could be adopted, you know, without someone having to go and go to school to learn how to carry this. It just, that's what struck me about it, is it's a simple idea. It's not, you know, it's deep, but it's not, if that makes any sense. It's not heavy.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So I think it's a good fit in those situations, and some of those things you can even start to talk about and, you know, implement without people even, like Tina said, without even naming it. You don't have to say, oh, you're going to come to this, you know, leadership conference about this. You just kind of start implementing it. So I'll share that book after we finish our presentation with you. It was pretty simple. I think it was actually written by Desmond Tutu's daughter. So.
Mary Grace.
Yeah, thanks. So I love this. I love this conversation style. It kind of reminds me of the restorative conversations. So I'd love to hear your thoughts about what you see as the emotional hurdle or like the personal vulnerability that the Western mindset has that pushes our resistance buttons, you know, causes us to resist this type of an Ubuntu approach. Like, what is it? What do we bump up against personally as a Western culture?
So I think it's woven in the fabric of our country. You know, we're very individualist. We're very focused on our individual success. You know, from the masculine perspective, we're very, as a country, as the West, or as countries, we don't tend to show vulnerability, and Ubuntu has an innate sense of vulnerability in it, because you have to realize that, you know, I can't be a person unless I have people around me that recognizes me as human. You know, so I think we struggle with, you know, as they say, hitching our horse to a cart. You know, we don't want to be dependent on other people. And I think if we can infuse, you know, curriculum or you know, workshops, or, you know, as Franklin was saying, 3rd grade, you know, like we can start to edge some of that out, so there's some room for these kids and eventually adults to, you know, be able to admit and come to terms with the fact that they aren't that, I say this kind of tongue in cheek, but they aren't that unique. What makes us unique is the people that we interact with, the community that we're in, the people that see us as human, the people that see us for who we are. That's what makes us unique. And without those people, without understanding that we are connected to those people and we need those people, we're really not much. I don't know if Julie, if you have anything you want to add to that.
I think sometimes we think too much alike, but yeah, I mean, the interconnectedness is kind of back to what I said. You know, if we disconnect people that are in trouble from that connectivity, it's not going to foster the idea that they have value in the community or that they are connected to the community. And I don't really have a big solution of how, you know, what all ways you do that. I think again that comes back to, we need to be a community of practitioners that work together to share ideas about how could we do that. And that's why our team is really involved in creating all these spaces where you can talk about stuff. And it's because rarely does anyone walk in without maybe having totally different ideas, but they find common ground. And I found a little bit of like what I've studied in this book, actually a lot, that it just kind of brings things together. And if you can come together to solve problems instead of, you know, this person's over here in that corner and this person's over here in that corner, then maybe you can bring all those ideas together to come up with better solutions. So I maybe looked a little bit deeper into that in this book, but it's a simple thing to share different elements of it. And I think teachers and even in some of the systems could do that without having to have a big degree of, you know, a master's degree or PhD. It's just simple way of thinking.
Ubuntu teamed with circles would be amazing.
Yeah.
Andrea?
Hi, folks. One of the things that comes up for me in this dialogue is that acknowledging the diversity of our experiences within the United States. So I'll use myself as an example. I grew up with a lot of different cultures that are collectivists. And so some of these values are very, very much understood and embodied in a very particular way. However, depending on where you are within those cultures, you have to assimilate into that dominant narrative in our country. So it's not that these narratives don't exist and that they're not functioning, is that we weren't listening to them, and we were often having to be in conflict between how you behave within your own culture or your home culture, and then how you behave in the workplace, how you behave in school. There was an expected assimilation, and it's not always, that diversity isn't always as obvious. So for example, with me, you know, my family is very dominantly Italian. And so it's very collectivist, and we were always very much talking about things from a different point of view. But then to go out into public, you have to put on different clothes. And so I think that we're finally getting to a place in our own country to acknowledge the diversity and those different streams of knowledge and different ways of functioning in the collaborative. And we see that when we take a look at a lot of different things we're trying to understand, even if it's something like gang behavior. So there is a collectivist and a different philosophy existing, but where does it exist? You know, are we asking ourselves, is that being marginalized on some level, even though it's very strong in certain situations?
So Andrea, I would just be curious to understand if you think that change is coming because we're maturing, like me and you, or, you know, me and, you know, whoever else. Are we maturing, or is it the changing of the guard, the younger generation that's coming in and has more of a collective mindset because of the experiences that they've had in their lifetime?
I appreciate that question. I don't think that I have a simple answer. I think it definitely deserves even more, and I would enjoy more dialogue around it. But I think that it's all of it. And I do see that in my own experience, I feel like generations younger than me are insisting on the acknowledgement of that diversity in a way that I wanted to insist on that and didn't have as much power behind it in order to insist. So I think that there is I think it's everything.
So I think we have some youth in this room, and I would just like to get some of their perspective on how they think Ubuntu might work as they become leaders and how they might implement it in their approach to leadership. No takers?
I'm not sure who we have.
John's in here.
can speak a, I can speak a little bit more about the, yeah, you know, some of the ideas in the book too. I think we don't have to, you know, when we talk about trying to bring them in and share this idea, I don't think we have to, it doesn't mean we have to sit down and absorb everything in the book. There are pieces of it that you can take that work for you or fit for you and what you do, and adapt it. I don't think it means you have to sit down and you have to accept all of the ideas that are in here. There's some that maybe feel more comfortable now and some to grow into.
Catherine?
I just wanted to say that when I'd seen this term brought up, it was used just at the beginning of a circle session, and it gave a description of it, and it just kind of brought us all in level set together. And so for as simple as just bringing a conversation and guiding it and using this phrase, you're educating them to a new term that they can take forward. But it was powerful in level setting and bringing unity to the conversation that was had. So it can be just as simple as starting a conversation using the phrase.